Okay, we're up to day number 8 of Halacha Yomi. So we're on page 64, on Halacha 88. One may not travel on a boat beginning from Thursday if the trip will extend into Shabbat. Okay, let's see, 123. See Halacha Bara regarding if this Halacha also applies when traveling and when leaving on Wednesday night. He concludes, if possible, one should be stringent and not travel even from Wednesday night, but definitely not from Thursday. Okay, back to the Halacha 88. Why? Why is this such a Halacha? This is because by doing so, one is not able to enjoy the Shabbat as a result of the tossing and the turning of the boat. And only after 3 days does someone get adjusted and comfortable with the sea. So you don't want to get seasickness, so you gotta go and be already 3 days on the boat. Let's see, 124. Shulchan Aruch in Resh Nun Het, Resh Mem Het, I'm sorry. The Shulchan Aruch adds that this is only the case when traveling in a boat, in the sea or the ocean where there are waves. But if you're traveling on a lake or a calm river, so then you could do so. You could go on the boat even on Erev Shabbat, because there's not going to be seasickness over there. Only the ocean and the sea, there's seasickness. As long as there's more than 10 fahim from the bottom of the boat to the floor of the lake or the river. Okay, Yakud Yosef adds that even though there are poskim who stay that today you can be lenient because the boats are built in a way that you don't feel the seasickness as much, you don't feel the waves as much as they used to. Nevertheless, a person should be machmir, should be stringent. It's common for a more sensitive person to still get seasick. Furthermore, such a leniency should not be relied upon, because it's possible for people to apply this leniency in situations where it doesn't really apply. So therefore, they might transgress its prohibitions. Therefore, nobody should go on a boat on Thursday. Okay, back on the end of 88. However, one who's traveling for the purpose of a mitzvah may even travel on a boat on Thursday or even on Erev Shabbat. Similarly, one is allowed to travel by boat if he does so for his livelihood. Interesting. So it comes out this halacha really applies when you're doing it for leisure. For leisure purpose, vacation purposes, that's where it's a problem to go on a boat on Thursday. Okay, fine. Let's see, 125. Note 125. Shulchan Aruch and Resh Mem Het says this halacha of leniency for mitzvah purposes. Examples of mitzvot the one is permitted to travel for is moving to Eretz Israel, or just visiting Israel is also a mitzvah. Collecting money for a Torah institution to enable one's children to get married, and so on and so forth. Different types of mitzvot that you're traveling for permits you to go even Erev Shabbat. 89. One who is permitted to travel by boat must request from the non-Jewish captain of the boat that he not travel on Shabbat. However, if the boat runs a specific schedule, or if the non-Jew does not listen to him, one may nevertheless travel on the boat, even if he'll be traveling on Shabbat as well. So you're on the boat, and the boat's moving on Shabbat. That's fine, as long as you ask the non-Jewish captain to not to go on Shabbat, and even if he doesn't listen to you, it is not your issue anymore. He is permitted to stay on the boat. This is only permitted if the captain of the boat is not Jewish, and most of the people on the boat are not Jewish. But if it's all Jewish company, all Jewish boat, so what is this? Hello Shabbat. You're not allowed to run this boat and run this ship on Shabbat. So therefore, you shouldn't go on such a boat. But if it's goyim and you told them not to, and they didn't listen, mutar. 90. And before traveling on a boat, even in permitted circumstances listed above, one must ensure all aspects on the boat do not present issues for Shabbat. And go on a cruise, you gotta make sure you deal with the electric door issue or electric bathrooms. Sometimes they don't have faucets to turn the water on. It's just everything's electric toilet, electric sensor or sink, electric door sensor to get into this room to that room. So elevator, all these things you have to think about. These things, the key card for the door, all these things you have to prepare in advance for the Shabbat. This can present a very difficult situation for an observant Jew, and one should not travel in such a boat on Shabbat. Okay. 91. If one is on a boat that arrives at the port on Shabbat, it is permitted to exit the boat via a ramp that was made on Shabbat in order to get off the boat, provided it was made for a non-Jew to exit first. So, or one can also exit the boat in a smaller rowboat. So there's an issue maybe of leaving the boat on Shabbat in regards to tchum, in regards to leaving the boat to go onto land, and it's permitted as long as the ramp was not made for you, was made for a goy, or to go from the boat to a smaller boat, it is permitted. However, it is as for your person. However, for belongings, it's not permitted for one to take along his belongings, since this is a violation of melacha of hotza'ah, carrying on Shabbat, which is forbidden. If one will sustain a large financial loss by leaving his items on the boat, one may ask a non-Jew to take them off the boat for him, or even promise to pay the non-Jew for his service or for doing so. Even if one exits the boat, he may then walk throughout the city he's in, even if the city was only within the tchum of where the boat was docked. So therefore, you should know you should be able to walk around. You're allowed to walk around in the city that the boat is docked by. This is in Shulchan Aruch and Resh Mem Het, and also in Taf Zayin. So let's see 132. See Mishnah Berurah and Kaf HaChaim who point out this is the only case for one who was in the boat in a permitted circumstance, such as he was traveling for the purpose of a mitzvah or began traveling the first 3 days of the week. But if you traveled in the Isser way, so then it wouldn't be permitted to do all these things, right? In any case, since these halachot can be very complicated and very many factors involved, you should call a rabbi to find out what you may and may not do in each situation. This is specifically in a case where you travel in a permitted way. That's where we said these halachot, you could disembark and you're allowed to travel in the city even though you got there on Shabbat. Okay, 92. It is permitted to enter a docked boat that will not be traveling on Shabbat. Let's say a person goes onto a boat on Shabbat. That's allowed as long as it's docked and it will not be traveling. 93. On Shabbat, one is prohibited to enter a boat that will be traveling, even if it does not use a motor, or to get to pray with a minyan. There's an interesting case where a person lived far from the shul, and there was a river blocking his path to go to shul. And he had to go all the way around to go on the bridge. And he wanted to just cross the river to get to the shul right there. He wanted to take a little rowboat on Shabbat and rowboat to the shul to get to the other side. To get to the other side. So over here, Rechut Yosef says it's asur to do that. Even to enter a boat, to travel a little bit, even without a motor, just to get to the minyan, it is prohibited. Okay, very good. That was on a boat. What about a plane? What about a train? So 94. One may not travel on an intercity train or subway on Shabbat, even if the train is only electrically powered and stops by itself anyways at every station, since one will have to handle money or bus tickets, which are considered mukseh. However, if a person was able to pay beforehand, one may be lenient in specific cases, like a doctor who has to travel to a hospital on Shabbat, or mohel who has to perform Brit Milah in a faraway place. But essentially, there's 6 points you have to be careful, even when one gets halachic permission to travel on a city bus or train. First of all, it looks weird, you're on a bus and a train. Also, people might learn to do the wrong thing from this. And also, it's not in the in the feeling of Shabbat. It's not in the aura of Shabbat, the spirit of Shabbat to go and be on these things. But a person who needs to, there is some types of situation where it's allowed. A train must travel only within the city. B, you cannot carry anything muktzah like money or a bus pass. C, the bus driver must be non-Jew, or most of the people on the bus must be non-Jewish. D, if it's in a place with no eruv, you can't carry anything with you. E, if you want to get off, you cannot press any button to signal that you want to get off. And F, you have to do your utmost to do it discreetly, so nobody should see you, right? Because it can be a Hilul Hashem or Marit Ayin. It looks suspicious. Okay, 95. One may not travel an intercity train even for the purpose of a mitzvah, since by doing so, you're violating the prohibition of leaving the tchum, traveling 11.5 kilometers out of your city domain. On Shabbat, traveling on a train is also prohibited even if you enter the train on Erev Shabbat, and you will not exit the train till after Shabbat, because even if most of the people on the train are not Jewish, because of this tchum issue. So therefore, it's prohibited to travel on a plane on Shabbat, even if the plane will take off before Shabbat begins. Let's say I go on a flight on Friday, and it's going to fly throughout the Shabbat, and I'll land after Shabbat. There's many opinions to say there's tchum issues even all the way up there, and you're traveling out of the domain that you started Shabbat in, meaning out of the city you started Shabbat in, so therefore it'll be a problem. What do you do? Happens sometimes that you have people who travel and they didn't expect that the flight should get delayed, or they got stuck in the air and they're only landing on Shabbat. So what do? Chas v'shalom, we should never know. That's why you should be very careful never to travel on Fridays, because of delays and because of this, because of that. Some people get stuck in their plane on Shabbat. What do? He says one who's traveling on a plane on Erev Shabbat, and for whatever reason will be stuck and will end up landing on Shabbat, should do as follows. A, before Shabbat begins, one should put all his muktzah items in a separate bag. They can be given to security until Shabbat is over. Similarly, one should try to fill out all forms necessary for passage before Shabbat. B. Shabbat begins according to the place that one is flying over, and therefore you have to calculate accordingly what time Shabbat starts. Based my zmanim has an in-flight zmanim. You have to know where you are and what part of the flight you are in. C. One who needs to use the bathroom on a plane should ask a nanju to open the door for him if the light will go on and off, because when the door is closed or open. If it's not possible, then one may open it with a shinui. D. One may exit the plane on Shabbat, but must give his belongings, including his passport, to a nanju in order to be taken off the plane. And one must remain in the airport for the remainder of Shabbat. You can't just get an Uber and go home on Shabbat. That's not permitted. E. One may give his passport to nanjus working in the airport for it to be inspected and stamped. F. One may pass through the metal detectors if needed. G. One cannot go from terminal to terminal if one needs to go outside while holding items. Since there's no eruv chatzerot over there, it'll be considered carrying to go from one terminal to the next when you go outdoors. So therefore, you should give to your stuff to nanju to care for you and be willing to pay for his services after Shabbat. So therefore, a person has to be careful not to avoid all this melacha as much as possible. You have to pay attention. A lot of things can happen in the airport. But again, how do you save yourself from all this? Don't travel Friday and say, oh, I have time. Try to avoid it, because a lot of times things happen, okay? We should zochet to be able to keep Shabbat and travel and be able to get here before Shabbat. Baruch Na'i Olam. Amen, amen. Hazak Baruch, everybody. See you next time.